Hi everyone, so back in the Vault Performance Gym again with Dr. Brendan. And if you saw our previous video from last week, looking at the hip hinge, we're going to move on from that and look at a different area of the body. Now we're going to focus in on the neck. So you often don't see many videos or much information out there on the importance and the role of this area of the spine, but it has huge influence on the way you move in your golf swing. So I'm going to open that up to you, Brendan. You could just tell us a little bit about the neck, the cervical spine, the role it plays, and just benefits from a few things, being aware of a few things.
Yeah, I think when people look at golf videos and they talk about rotation, one of the things that most people don't realize is our neck is responsible for most of our rotation in the golf swing, specifically kind of the upper portion of our neck. So the large majority of our rotation happens there, but we always tend to focus on kind of what the rib cage is doing and kind of the spine lower down below the neck. So this is an important consideration if we're looking at improving rotation and improving ease of rotation as we move. And a lot of times when we're dealing with pain issues in athletes or performance issues, a lot of times it comes down to sort of how they're moving through the neck. So one of the big things is, just because of life and sort of how we operate now, what happens is over time our head starts to move forward. And as our head starts to move forward from different positions, we create sort of too much range of motion kind of in our lower spine, and we shut off the available range of motion in our upper spine. And I think one of the easiest solutions to start thinking about is, when I address the ball, the first thing I really need to consider is standing up really tall and feeling like I have a good long spine so that I can access all of my range of motion through my neck, through my rib cage, and through my low back. Because a lot of times people, when they address the ball, they'll set up and their head's kind of already like this, and then they look down and their head's here, and then they kind of just look. So we're creating a situation where right off the bat, from a neck perspective, we're going to have to create compensations to adapt for the fact that our neck isn't able to move as much as it should. So I think for your viewers, Ian, the easiest thing is, before I address the ball, really thinking about being as long as possible. So that cue too can cause problems, because then people will just shove their head back and think they're standing up tall, and that's really not what we're after. I would say
sometimes, just to jump in there as well, lots of time like IQ players, you had to see that, it's like, I'm going to be really tall.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what I try and get people to understand is, we want to create space. So we want to create space in our joints. So one of the simple cues, if standing up tall is not working, we want to imagine kind of the top of my head being pulled up towards the sky. And so yes, we're going to get sort of a natural tilt kind of our head forward, but we're not sort of jamming our neck back, and we're not using excessive muscle force to change our head position. We're just naturally going to get into our more helpful curves in our spine, rather than sort of being stuck in certain positions. And that should be a relatively comfortable thing for most people to do. Obviously, cervical spine can be a very complicated thing, so if there's stuff going on, then we want to consider seeing a qualified golf coach or seeing a therapist about it.
So maybe just a quick cue for the viewers, just like we did with the hip. If I was to, I think sagittal plane is probably the best one to look at, isn't it? Almost the down the line view. Yeah. If I go into, or even I start tall and feel that tall feeling, and then I hinge, similar to kind of the things we were speaking last week, they would be the cues to kind of follow. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So if we're trying to adjust our neck position once we're already in setup, we're just creating compensations for what's going on. So if we can adjust from a neck perspective, if we can adjust our neck position before we get into setup, and then have the appropriate hinge that we discussed last week, that places our neck in a good position to create some rotation.
That's great. So really enjoyed kind of going over an area that we don't see too often discussed, but hopefully provide some awareness of the importance of just posture there through the neck, through that upper spine. Super helpful. One thing that mentor of mine, Mark Bull, Dr. Mark Bull I should say, shares quite regularly is that rotation in many cases for people will begin at the spine in the golf swing, or sorry, at the neck in the golf swing. So there's just another point of evidence of how important it is to kind of set up well there and build some awareness around good posture in the neck. Brendan, thanks once again.
Of course, thank you.